I am Tob Wanapane. I'm an equity member and equity counselor. Welcome to the Actors Equity in Memoriam gathering, where we honor the lives of our union siblings that have passed on. I will start by reading the code of conduct that is read before every official equity gathering. Actors Equity Association is committed to providing a respectful environment free of discrimination and harassment, regardless of an individual's race, religion, color, sex, age, national origin, sexual orientation, disability, gender identity or expression, ancestry, pregnancy, or any other characteristic prohibited by law. Because the union expects participants in its activities, events, and meetings to respect one another and to recognize and value individual differences, Actors Equity Association will not tolerate discriminatory, harassing, disrespectful, or otherwise unacceptable behavior at any of its activities, events, or meetings. It adopts the following code of conduct and expects that those that participate in any of its activities, events, or meetings to abide by it. In addition to this code of conduct, Actors Equity Association has an anti-discrimination and anti-harassment policy and complaint procedure which covers staff employees of the union. This code of conduct is not intended to replace or amend that staff policy. I have read that code of conduct many, many times in my time serving at Equity, and it means a little more these days. And I'm really proud and happy to get to read that. Along with the code of conduct, we would like to set a tone of kindness. We are here to honor, celebrate, tell a fun anecdote. We are joined by members, friends, sometimes family members. So disparaging talk will just not be tolerated. We've never had a problem in the past, but we just want to set a tone of kindness. We've been doing these for a little over 2 years now. They are officially something that we will keep doing, which I'm very happy about. I want to point out that on our member portal, there's a new page for submitting memories of members that have passed. These memories will be published on the Equity website in the monthly In Memoriam post. So you could speak today of someone and still decide to go into that page and write something. We won't get to him this week, but Gavin Creel is one of my friends from college, and staff reached out to me. I'm going to write something for Gavin in that. I wrote something for Michael McGraw when he passed, and it actually was like one of the more healing things you can do to like sit down and write a letter to someone that has left. So we are a little behind with our In Memoriam gatherings. We usually do 3 months at a time. Today, you get 4 for the price of 3. So you will be hearing names of members that were lost between April 1st and July 31st of this year. So there will be some names of important people that have passed: Adrian Bailey, Gavin Creel, Ken Page, that will be in our next gathering, which we were trying to schedule. We might try to get one in January so we can try to catch up, because these are too important to let them go away. So we'll be reading April 1st through July 31st. As a quick FYI, members and staff that have passed more recently, they're not ignored. I'm reading and thinking at the same time. After the names have been read, there'll be time for people to talk and share. And we tried a 2-minute time limit and we never needed it. If you go on and on and on, I might ask you to wrap up, but just like, let's be kind to each other. If a bunch of people have their hands up and the time is ticking away, let's try to offer space to everyone. But you know what? If you're the only one with your hand up and you want to talk for 4 minutes, talk for 4 minutes. So I'm really happy to introduce these 3 wonderful people who run these meetings with me: James Williams III, Maureen Moore, and Kim Titus, to read the names of those lost between April and July 31st. James?
April. Al J. Accardi. Marla Adams. Ron Alexander. Lisa Altomare. Kathy Arlt. David Clark Alston. Henry Bannister. Rita Barnes. George Barnett. Sandy Barry. Carol Bartlett, Glenn Bader, Jane Bates, Lois Battle, Roger Bechtel, Robert Bell, Gary L. Bellis, Kara Bennett, Meg Bennett, Sheila Blair, Donald Owen Bunnell, Trent Bright, Sherry Terrell Brogdon, Gardner Brooksbank, Robert Brewer, Robert Burns, Larry Boussard, Richard Kane, Sherry Caldwell, Frank Califano, Kevin Carlisle, Rick Carter, Terry Carter, Victoria Catland, James Caulfield, Clint Chin, Robert Chu, Wendy Coates, Michael Corver, Loretta Kala, Tamara L. Compton, Georgia Connor, Grace Coviello, Patricia Cray, Kay Cummings, Christy Curtis, Christopher Kevin Cusack, Michael Cusack, Michael Dalby, Samuel Z. Damon, Amanda Davies, Hank Davies, Dinah Day, George DeVries, Dennis Decker, Vince Daddario, Jacqueline de Havilland, Martha A. Del Rio, James DiBiasio, Diane Dillon, Suzanne Dodd, Mark John Donahue, William R. Donald, Patricia Donchez, Christopher Durang, Paul Elder, Mara Ellen, Sue Ingbrecht, Barrett Epstein, Roger W. Erb, Fred Fagan, Nancy Fell, Charles Fernald, Wilhelmina Fernandez, Rhonda Fields, Bobby Fincher, Gregory Fleeman, Ronald Forsmo, Barbara Foster, Phil Gerdell, Michael Gibson, James Gillerin, Bradford D. Gooding, Louis Gossett, Lois Greco, Claire I'll try it again. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Claire Gregory, Victor J. Gregory, Michael A. Griggs, Willeen Gunn, Cardell Hall, Luann Hargis, Bill Harris, Jim Hassard, Pat Hyder, Arlen Hepner, Barbara Heyer, Patricia Hyde, John Imro, Jerry Mack Johnston, Mark Camhigh, Nick Paxton Healy, Sandra Kelly, Matthew Knox, Rich Komenick, Bill Kuchan, Montgomery Kuklinski, Betty LaRoe, Marshall Lacombe, Steve Landis, Betty Lane, Stephen Todd Lang, Dan Langhofer, Dan Lemonnier, Desiree Ledette, Jack Lee, Robert Limpert, Ron Loeb, Thomas R. Loftus, James Lovelet, Kevin Mahan, Philip Mancuso, Jan Manderfield, Catherine A. Marianto, Nicholas Masai, Melanie K. Matthews, Malachi McCourt, Mary Ann McGarry, Amy McKellen, Michael McAllister, William J. McKinnon, Damon Milliken, Alan Mershon, Ed Maroney, Jean Morrill, Janet Morrison, Jean E. Morrissey, Roger Muller, Mark Murphy, Tyrone Tate Murphy, Jan Musetter, Myron Howard Nadell, John F. Nahas, Richard Natowski, John Neelan, Linda Noreen, Michael Neville, Jim Newcomer, Ellen Nichols, Robert P. Niznik, Jack Norman, Cornelius O'Connor, Ann Ann Oleschlager, Cindy Olstein, Sigrun Omark, Beverly Ostraska, Jerry Payon, Nick G. Papa George, Ken Patton, Morgan Paul, Bob Penny, Jim Perrine, Albert Pertilion, Beth Trafford Peters, Ruth Ann Phimister, Jim Post, Patty Pratt, Victoria Preminger, Sally Pritchard, Michael Poofall, Thomas Quimby, Jim Quinn, Joan Rasick, Gary R. Ramsey, Harry Reams, Kilty Reeves, Herbert W. Rice, Sean Michael Rice, Charles Scott Richard, James Robert Riggs, Lynn Roberts, Clark Rogers, David Roos, Arlene E. Roseman, Doug Rasson, Jim Rothwell, Barbara Rush, Suzanne Sadler, Doug Scarborough, Robert Shear, Shamal Schrock, Carol Ann Scott, Richard Allen Scott, Edmund L. Schaff, Jan Shapiro, William Shepard, Ardell Sheridan, Robert Shockley, Arthur Silber, David Sinkler, Joan Slavin, Brandon Allen Smith, Michael Sokoloff, Jesse Spear, Sherry Spillane, William A. Spindler, Tom Spivey, Brian Stasek, Jenny Sterling, John W. Stimson, Lee Strucker, Yakov Sullivan, Bernard L. Tansey, Daniel Tifo, Michelle Thoreau, Lygia Thompson, Charles Tokentons, Catherine Tracy, M. Emmett Walsh, Keith Walters, Gary Ware, Curtis Watkins, Mark B. Weiss, Lewis Welch, Debbie Whitting, Doug Wild, Elwoodson Williams, Wiley Wisdom, Carl Werner, Donald H. Wonder, Margaret Hayes Young, Julius Zagon.
Thank you, James. Maureen, I think you're muted right now.
Thank you. Member losses in May. Joanna Albrecht, Jack Blackton, James Bodge, Randall Burritt Brown, Ronald Cohen, Dabney Coleman, Carol Dilley, Larry Ellis, Luz D. Innes, John Fleming, Hay Floyd, Ann Folke, Thomas J. Gates, Linda A. Geringer, Marjorie A. Gilmore, Holly Gwynn Graham, John C. Howe, J. J. Jefferson, Eva Marie Johnson, Peter Johnson, Elizabeth McRae, Laura Martins, Charles H. Hollister, Patricia Morinelli, Dominic Mora, Barry E. O'Rourke, Harris Pete, David A. Penhale, Hal Frittner, Gordon Rogoff, Nancy Lee Ryan, James Paul Sherman, Gloria Stroop, Sean Vieter, Sam Art Williams, Bobby Wyckoff.
Member losses in June. Bill Blackwood, Alan Boardman, George Barros, Kay Boss, Tom Bosel, Kenneth E. Brocious, Georgia Buchanan, Gerald A. Cantor, Maurice Carter, Kim Catano, Emily Cobb, John Connor, Carol Jean Delmar, Flo DeRay, Penny W. Dwyer, Tony Ferrantino, John M. Fry, Rebecca Galloway, David Scott Godin, David Hall, Jerry Holland, Patrick H. Horrigan, J. Kane, Peter P. Kavoyan, Edward Croys, John F. Lane, David Alistair Lewis, Richard Mark, Kathleen McGrath, Tom McGreevy, Marianne McNamara, Patrick McNamara, Ron McGaughan, Blanche Mickelson, Dale Miller, Tony Monaco, Ron Morgan, Susan J. Noblet, Phil Oakley, Paul E. Orwick, Janice Page, Tony Pandolfo, Gloria Ribbon, Jonathan Reinhold, Sylvester Rich, Ronnie D. Robertson.
Member losses in July. Eric Anderson, Erica Ash, Terrence Beezer, Joan Benedict, Donald Christie, Bill Cobbs, Charles Deerkop, Lynette Dupree, Grace Foster, Larry Gray, Mike Heslin, Hiram Caston, Marvin Lichterman, Tony Lobianco, Anthony Mordente, Robert Ivar Murray, Judy Nugent, Rochelle Oliver, David Parker, Laura Parker, Bill Rollerson, Betty Ann Rees, John S. Robbins, Arthur Rubin, Whitney Ridebeck, Doug Sheehan, James B. Sicking, Ron Simons, Jade K. Stice, Connie Van Dyke, Renald White. All right. Those are the names from those 4 months. And wherever you all are, forgive us if we pronounced your name wrong. We did our best. All right. So we have 35 minutes left in our gathering. We would like to open the meeting to individual remembrances, anecdotes, celebrations. We want time for everyone to speak, but again, if no one has their hand up, just talk. And I want to remind you all of the kind, respectful, positive tone we wish to create in the meeting. If you'd like to speak, please use the raise your hand feature. It can be found under the reactions tab at the bottom of your screen. I think that's, yeah, the one that has a heart on it. If you can't find it and you want to talk and no one's talking, just shout out and say, Todd, I want to talk. Equity will give you permission to turn on your camera and mic, which I think we don't even need them to do. But I see Michael Del Orto with his hand up. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Todd. Hello, everybody. I wanted to speak briefly for a moment about my friend and colleague, Jim Bodge. Jim Bodge was a stalwart here in the New England area. He was our area liaison for 15 years. He faithfully served this union for more than 15 years, because he was on the liaison committee for years and years before that. In fact, when it was first organized. And I just want to let everyone know that Jim was a dear friend. Towards the end of his life, he was in a nursing home, and he and I would speak once, every week or so. And he was always asking about equity and always asking about what was going on, and always asking to be wanted to kept up to speed about things happening in the market. If there is anyone who is individually responsible for our NEAT contract, the New England Area Theaters contract, it's Jim, because he was, as he put it, the squeaky wheel with New York to make sure that contract got started up and that it kept going. He served on the negotiating teams for years and years and years. And he was my friend, and I loved him dearly, and we worked together so many times. And also, in addition, Don Christie, who I worked with for years at Worcester Foothills, and loved him so much. He was such a lovely, welcoming, dear man, and a superb stage manager. And he was always welcoming to my daughter, who always wanted to sit in the booth when she came to see Dad in a show. And he was always very indulgent about that and showing her what was going on. So thank you very much for this opportunity, Todd. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael. I wonder if I saw you in a show at Foothills. I grew up north of Boston. I'm sure I did. We'll have to bond over that someday. D. Hody.
Hi, y'all. Hi, it's great to see you, Todd, and all of you. Thank you again so much to your committee, Todd, and all of you for being here today. This is a big, wide catch-up of people. I just want to say a word about Tony LoBianco. He was a really lovely man. I only knew him kind of professionally, although I never worked with him. And I admired his dedication to veterans. He always remembered veterans. I knew Kathleen McGrath in passing, friends of friends, people that worked with her, or maybe went to school with her. Lovely woman, interesting actress. Peter Kavoyan, I met on the Will Rogers tour. I can't even remember why, but I ended up renting his extra bedroom in his apartment in LA when I left that tour. And he loaned me, he had another car. He let me use his little Jeep, and I tooled around LA trying to find work. He was a lovely, lovely guy, and a very talented actor. I remember he played Tata in Ragtime in the Chicago company. And it was like a great thing for him. And also, I think he went to Vegas too. And lastly, Tom Spivey was my ex-husband. We were married for 11 years in 1980 till 1991. And he was a lovely, talented, artistic, Renaissance-y kind of guy. And I don't have bad things to say to him. I think bad things happen to him, which happens in life. But he was a really, truly good soul. And I hope he is resting in peace. Thank you all.
Thanks, D. Diane Nicole. Hi, Diane.
Hi, how's everybody? It's good to see all of you. It is a big list of people, and I just wanted to comment. Art Rubin was serving on council back in the 70s when I first started, first became an equity member and then started working with council. And he was a force to be reckoned with. He truly had a lot to do with showcases and off Broadway. And so I just want to acknowledge him. Also Laura Martins. Laura Martins and I met on an Anything Goes tour that we did with Sid Caesar and Ginger Rogers. And she and I truly bonded during that time. And as life takes us down different roads, we lost contact. And I actually ran into her about a year ago, and we kept trying to get together, which we never did. And so I feel badly about that, but she was a lovely, lovely person. Bob Brewer. Bob Brewer served on our staff. Bob was a stage manager, kind of dedicated his life to equity. He was a stage manager for years, then turned staff and ran everything about the production contract all through the 80s and into the 90s. When he retired up to the Berkshires, and that's where he lived out the rest of his life. Then last but not least is Don Christie, who again, I got to serve on council with him. A wonderful stage manager, a man full of joy, always with a smile on his face, ready to work, ready to get down to business, but always with grace and dignity. And so I just want to make sure that those people were acknowledged today. Thank you. And Dee, I'm so sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Excuse me, I'm going to interrupt you.
Oh,
Tom actually passed in the fall of 2020, I believe. He might have had COVID. I'm not sure, we'd sort of lost touch, but I'm sad that I didn't know to put his name in, that there wasn't anyone to, and I just, with everything else that was happening in the world then, I just kind of didn't notice. So I feel bad about that, but I knew that he had left us because I'm still in touch with his brother. So thank you.
It's actually a good thing to point out. When we say member losses in each month, it doesn't mean that's actually the month that someone passed. It's when it was reported to the union.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised, this is just a guess, that the brilliant voice of James A. Williams had to read so many names today because it came out in the month that tax time comes out, And I wouldn't be surprised if that's part of why names get reported. So it's not the month that someone's passes, it's when it gets reported to the union. And there's a number of ways that that can happen. So thank you for that. Thank you, Diane. Margaret.
Hi. Thank you for this honor. Joan Slavin was someone I worked with at Ligurian Players in my parish. We did little tours of plays during Advent and Lent. And I was very saddened to hear of her loss because she was very vibrant. And Barbara Rush, although I didn't know her real personally, actually ran costumes for Alice in Concert. And that was the first time I met her. She played the Red Queen and was so brilliant. I know several people who aren't on the list because I can't get somebody to, well, one of them, I can't get somebody to officially report it. My friend CJ Gelfand died in July of 2023, we think, because she was in her apartment and they couldn't get in for a while. So CJ was a powerhouse. She was on Broadway in Chorus Line. She was on tour, national tours with a friend of mine, Ryan Hilliard. And she was also a playwright, wrote a little skit where she was Martha. And it was pretty funny. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Nancy Daly. Hi, Nancy.
Hey, everybody. First of all, my heart and my love to all my former fellow counselors. I'm looking at your faces and just like, oh my gosh, there you are. I love you and miss you all. I have two people to speak about today. First is Gene Morrill. He was the chair for a very long time of the Equity Liaison Committee in Washington, D.C. And he is what we call a statesman. He just seemed to know everybody. Sometimes he would travel up to New York for equity meetings, but he kind of was this calm of the center of any storm that might occur with any kind of, because, I'm sure, Dee, I know you've worked in Washington, D.C. on tour. I know you were there. There's a couple of, there's a lot of equity theaters in Washington, D.C., Arena. I think Dee's worked everywhere. Let's just say that. Arena, Folger, Shakespeare. There's a lot of great equity theaters there. And so he just kind of kept everything in order. I also wanted to talk a little bit about Terrence Beezer, who we call Terry. He was an actor in Los Angeles. He was on the SAG-AFTRA board for many, many years. But he and his beautiful wife, Muriel Minot, they were kind of the London Fontaine of the Los Angeles area. They worked at this theater, they worked at that theater. They were just bonded like this. And very sadly, Terry passed away from the effects of dementia, and my fellow counselors know full well that is my world. I lead a national team for the Alzheimer's Association. And when I would discover that that was the way that he passed, it was just like, oh my dear God, that just bumps up the urgency for our team. And his name is on our team sign. We walked in his honor this year. We also walked for a lady that we'll be talking about in the next meeting, our beloved fellow counselor, Mary Pat Green. So I'm so grateful that you all do this. I'm honored to be here to take care of our own and honor our own. And it's beautiful and brilliant and so equity that you all do this. This is so equity. This is who you all are. So love to everybody, especially I miss you. Right now I can see Diane and Dee and Todd and Maureen. So love you all and can't wait to see you soon.
Thanks, Nancy. Pat Loeb.
Hi there. I'm still in morning mode, so I'm not turning on the camera.
Okay, you do you.
Sorry, I was in early morning meetings and I just haven't bothered yet. Union meetings at early times for West Coast. Most of the people on these lists are so well known and so well beloved by so many people. I wanted to raise up Phil Oakley, who was, he was an undergrad when I went to grad school at USC, and we went to Edinburgh together, and we did high school theater festivals together, and he was in my caroling company for a couple of seasons. He was just a genuinely nice, caring human being, did a tremendous amount of local work in the Los Angeles area. Honestly, don't know if I'm told that he did work, outside of the West Coast, but I'm honestly was never aware of that. I was always aware of him constantly working here on the West Coast and in particular in LA, but he was just such a genuinely warm and caring and nice human being. And it was quite a surprise to see someone who was so much younger than me, who had passed without a whole lot of mention. And I wanted to raise him up and celebrate him.
Thank you, Pat. I have a letter from someone that couldn't be here today. Iris Lieberman couldn't be here today. And so she writes, my dearest friend and colleague, Peter Canovian, died on April 24th, 2024. We played opposite each other in 2008 and then again in 2013. He was a wonderful friend and supporter. He struggled with cancer for 7 years, and though it ravaged his body, it never daunted his spirit nor his desire to be creative. Just last year, he wrote and illustrated a children's book about a little lost cloud. I don't know if it'll ever be published, but it was his dream. He was a kind man, he was spiritual, he was strong, and very, very loving. And watching the Tonys will never be the same without him. Thanks for letting me read that, Iris, who couldn't be here. I think we all have that moment in these readings, and I help run these things, and it's when a name is read and you go, what? And that happened to me today, and I literally had to Google it to make sure. But my friend Amanda Davies, who is my age or younger, and I don't know how she passed, I got my equity card doing a show called The Butter and Egg Man at the Atlantic Theater Company off Broadway. Great show. And I had 13 lines. I think she had 14 lines. We were the kids. It was a lot of like Broadway greats, John Conley, Julie Halston, Michael McGraw, all these people were in the show. And I just was quiet and watched. And she and I were the two youngins. And we were both getting our equity cards, and I thought we were so on equal footings. I'm buying 3 slices of pizza every day, and that was each meal because I had a $1 slice place in my neighborhood because it's all I could afford. Little did I know that she came from like a soap opera dynasty, but she had no airs about her. We were just the kids in the show together. We were both 23, 24, and we were just thrilled to be getting our equity cards. And we were very different humans, and we just loved and supported each other so much. And I didn't really keep in touch with her. And I'm really sad that she passed. I also want to point out Janice Page, the original Babe in Pajama Game. Come on. She sounds crazy on that recording. We gotta love her.
And did you hear her recording of Here's Love? I fell in love with her with that show.
Is that the Meredith Wilson, Here's Love? Is that what
Yeah,
that is?
she was the
Okay.
original. She was the original, and
I
her,
think the original was the only with that show.
but she did that beautiful ballad, You Don't Know How It Feels.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just tears your heart out every time you hear it. And I mean, I was lucky enough to see it with the original cast, but oh my gosh.
Thanks, Pat. Would anybody? Oh, Al Bandonis. Hi, Al. How you doing?
Good. Hi, Todd. Hi, everyone. My name is Al Bandonis, one of your national vice presidents. Todd, I want to thank you and Kim and James, Maureen, and our staff for doing this several times a year. Most importantly, I want to thank everyone for coming, everyone who's on this call. This is, for me, honestly, I think the most important union gathering that we have. I hate using the word meeting, but to read the names, honor these people's careers, celebrate their membership in our association. We're always told, and it is true, that we are the union, right? That we're the union. So taking the time to celebrate these members, so many of us go, I hate to say unrecognized, but it is true that the members do not have the luxury of having Broadway's lights dimmed for them. And this is a way that we can honor and celebrate everyone. As you know, we used to do this in membership meetings and leave with a standing ovation to them. But the fact that you've taken time out of your day to celebrate our fellow union siblings, I hope that all of you will take the time over the next couple months before the next one to tell fellow members how wonderful this is, how moving it can be, so that when we come back in a couple months, we have an even larger crowd. And you know, there have been some very big names recently, some controversial, do we dim the lights? Where should we dim the lights? All that stuff that is out of Equity's hands. But in order to honor those who will not get that treatment, this is where to do it. So thank you all so very much for being here, and for staff and this small committee for doing this all the time.
Thanks, Al. I really appreciate it. Margaret.
I just want to add, Malachy McCourt, I mean, my goodness, I was an extra in a movie in which he played the priest, which was pretty hysterical. But I just, a note, a great voice is lost.
Thanks. Anybody else? You know what's great is, even if you don't know someone whose name is Red, I find these so healing, and I like go out and have such a good evening at a possibly what might be considered a sad event. Oh, yes, Laurel, come on in, talk to us.
Okay, I want to say something about Emmett Walsh, Michael. And I worked with him in Kentucky one summer at summer stock. And we did, gone out of my head now, that the Tennessee Williams play, and we did The Man Who Came to Dinner. And he was just such a joy and so much fun to work with. Now, I saw him again in LA just after he had done that wonderful, simple, a wonderful film he made. It's like The Simple Thing or Simple Act, something like that. But anyway, he was a lot of fun. He was always joking around. And at that time, we didn't have much money. It was in the early 70s, I think. And so when we got the money to go to Kentucky from New York, Michael decided he would go by Greyhound. And in order to secure himself a double seat on the Greyhound, he bought a big ball of yarn and some knitting needles. And he sat in the seat, and he was like got someone to start a scarf. So when people got on the bus and they saw this guy knitting a scarf, they didn't want to get anywhere near him. So he secured a double seat. He was so much fun, always joking, crazy Irishman. Gone too soon.
I'm gonna try that knitting trick next time I take a grab. Still learning every day.
Every day.
Every day. Thank you, Laurel. We haven't said Javon's name, Javon Johnson, who is our staff member and makes all of this happen. So, like, we wouldn't know what names to read if it wasn't for James. So, Javon, thank you so much, Javon. Margot.
Hi, everybody. So I'm going to say a little something about Bob Brewer, who has already been spoken about. But I became a liaison for South Florida 1,000 years ago. I like to call myself the lost liaison because when I became liaison, it was due to Edmond Dante's death. I was the co-chair. Edmund died, and I suddenly became chair. And it was one of those crazy things where I did not know what the heck I was doing. And Bob Brewer, God love him, took me under his wing as a liaison, showed me the ways that way, and then was part of the reason why I became a counselor. He was one who pushed me into saying, no, you need to be the voice of South Florida. And more than half of my life later, I am still a counselor. And it is all I blame partially Bob Brewer with love. But he was such an important part of my life as a friend through the years. So I thank you again for doing this, Todd, for insisting that we do this for our members who have gone on. And it is such an honor to be a part of it as an audience, as well as someone who is remembering. Thank you.
Thanks, Margot. So I'm gonna take the little goose from Al Bandonis and say, next month, next time we do this, which I think we're doing one in January, when you go to register, send the link to a friend or two and say, I've been doing this, you should come. Let's do that. Just the people here. I think, well, and we can really expand this thing. And even if there's only 20 of us, it's worth doing. Yeah, I said that, Al. Yeah, and council has voted to make this permanent. So let's just keep growing. Well, I think that is our meeting for today. Again, gathering. We'll call it gathering. Oh, Maureen, you have something to say?
I'm sorry, and he's already been
Don't be
spoken about,
sorry. Please talk.
but James Bodge, he was a hero. For not just the whole membership, but specifically for the New England area. I so admired him. He will be missed, and I was sorry, as you said, Todd, when you hear names and you go, what? It's shocking. So, Michael, thank you for doing such a lovely tribute to him.
All right, everyone. That, unless I'll give 10 more seconds, see if anybody, you don't have to raise your hand if you don't know how to do it, if you want to just shout something out. James, come on in, buddy.
You know, I always try not to say something, but
were you worried you hadn't talked enough in this meeting?
Yeah, I think I hadn't, you hadn't heard me enough. No, I just wanted to mention Lou Gossett. Lou was an inspiration for me to do this, you know. And there's so many great things that there's just that name, and being able to say that name in this gathering means a lot to me. And just one of the giants. I think about reading his name in theater history books, where it was in Take a Giant Step, and then finding out he was in Raisin in the Sun, and then to finally realize that I share a union with him. That means a lot to me. And I'm sure each way it means their names that mean a lot to everybody in this room.
Yeah. Thanks, James. Well, I'm not going to say anything better than that. So, thank you all. Have a wonderful, beautiful evening, and let's be good to each other in this time we're in. Thanks so much.